Welcome to Purdue University College of Science Superheroes of Science podcast. I'm Stephen.
And I'm Sarah. We will be discussing anything and everything related to the science classroom and interviewing scientists.
Because as we know, scientists are the superheroes behind the science.
So join us as we learn about the scientists and explore current trends in K-12 science education.
Welcome to a special edition of Superheroes of Science. We're here at the Lawrence Hall of Science at the University of California, Berkeley. And joining us today is Mike Jabot, Professor of Science Education with the State University of New York at Fredonia. Mike was very nicely guiding me through this, so thank you. And thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure.
All right, so you're like the ideal guest for this.
I am.
In
You really
many
are.
ways.
Yes.
I mean, it's superheroes, and you are a superhero. Yeah, you've been my hero for years, Mike. And science, you're a professor of science. Oh, that fits. That's convenient.
That is convenient.
For sure. Science education. But before you were a professor of science education, go back in the day.
Yeah, so I was a high school physics, environmental science, and earth science teacher for 15 years in central New York, and absolutely, positively loved it. Did my master's degree at the State University of New York at Cortland and my PhD at Syracuse University while I was still teaching. So I was a full-time grad student, full-time teacher, part-time husband, part-time dad.
Now, whoa.
And really, really lucky to have the wonderful wife that I have. And I'd like to say I have three wonderful sons. I'll just say I have three sons who are
I'm glad you
wonderful adults.
I'm glad you corrected this part-time husband.
Yeah.
So thank you.
I was really, really lucky.
Yeah.
Front of my dissertation says there's a special place in heaven for the mother of three sons, or in your case, four. So,
Okay.
That's funny.
Got it. All right, Michael, you're a teacher. You're a past teacher. You work with teachers.
I do.
What inspired you early on to get involved with science?
Yeah, so when I was in high school, earth science in New York State was sort of not a science that everybody took.
Okay.
So I think there were 12 of us my freshman year that took earth science. We actually took it in the maintenance building behind our high school.
Oh.
The person that taught earth science also taught small engine repair, as funny as that sounds.
Mm-hmm.
But he probably, in my science career, probably had the greatest influence on me that anybody else had. And it was just the nature, I think, of earth science, of being out in the field, in collecting data that had meaning, sort of personal meaning, and then eventually sort of discover the bigger meaning that it has. And then he retired. He would not retire until someone, this is what he said, he could retire because one of his own was taking his place. So when he retired, I took over teaching earth science in his room. So really sort of choked me up a little bit, to be honest.
It's choking me up a little bit. Yeah,
He was a great,
appreciate
great guy.
this.
His wife was my third grade teacher,
Oh.
which I did not know until, I eventually figured this out. The
Right.
last name was one of the clues. I
Mm-hmm.
think that, but,
That's a good clue.
Yeah.
yeah. So I absolutely, I loved, and I still do love teaching. I think I would have said I had the best job in the world. But now I think having the opportunity to work with future teachers or in-service teachers and the students in their classroom is just an awesome, awesome opportunity.
So, as a professor of science education, what do you do?
So what
are you supposed to do?
Yeah. So thanks for asking it that way. Yeah. So in the College of Ed, my main job is teaching the science methods courses, and so every future teacher at SUNY Fredonia takes their methods course with me. I also teach an Earth Systems class, which is part of our general education called Fredonia Foundations. And that is, I have 3 huge sections of Earth Systems. And that Earth Systems is connects natural science with global perspectives. So kind of hits my sweet spot about that we don't, that we're not necessarily learning science anymore without seeing the context of the role that science plays, whether it's meeting sustainable development goals or just impacting people's lives. So,
Nice. Yeah. So you were inspired by a teacher.
I was
And
by many,
so
by many teachers.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so now you're helping others become inspirations to future scientists.
Thanks for saying it that way. Yes, that's it. I hope that's what I'm doing. A lot of superintendents, when they see either our student teachers or they hire our graduates, sort of describe them as being my little disciples. So they come in the classroom and they're not afraid of doing science, and they're as excited, almost as excited about doing science as I am doing science with them on campus. So I hope it's kind of infectious a little bit.
That is awesome. We need more of that.
Yeah.
As we work, Sarah and I work K-12, and so elementary teachers, oftentimes you get some who are just excited about it, and they're going to be successful in teaching some kind of science regardless. But then the bulk of them, it's a little intimidating.
Well, it is, and we've done a pretty good job of telling them that they're not good at science. I think some of the most authentic science that we see happening in schools happens at the elementary level, partly because I don't think they feel comfortable enough with the content that they present it the way we typically do in high school. So they already have an openness that we're going to have to learn this together, which automatically makes it sort of much closer to being inquiry by the students than it does teacher-delivered kinds of things. Still a big, it's a risk, right? When you don't, many other parts of their day are much better guided than their science time. But I think they see what I hope they see is that kids are really excited about doing science. And it's not, at the elementary level, it's really not necessarily about content. It's about a disposition towards science. It's about our youngest scientists seeing themselves as scientists.
Mm-hmm.
So take that enthusiasm and help them be better readers and writers. Collect data and try to use that data when you're teaching math and things.
So even in the elementary, collect data?
Oh, I think they can collect data every day.
What about teachers that are a little hesitant, like you were saying, that they're maybe a little reserved and think, well, I'm going to go into this knowing I'll be learning this with you. I mean, even those teachers eventually get to the point where they're collecting data.
Yeah, they're at least letting the kids collect data. So we have a school that is a globe school.
Okay.
They alternate through each of the grades who's doing the data collection. So kindergarten may be collecting precipitation data. So a kindergarten class goes out. We only need one person to read the rain gauge.
Okay.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the teachers, well, quite honestly, in these younger grades, it takes the kids longer to get their coats on often than it does to collect some really important data. What I think is awesome is in the district, that kindergarten that collects that data shares that data with the high school earth science teacher who uses that same data in a very different way. So precipitation becomes part of circle time in kindergarten, but it becomes part of this ongoing climate study at the high school. And I just think that's awesome.
Oh,
That is really cool.
All right,
And really easy to do because the technology is really easy to do. So if you use a Google Sheet, right, and you share that with the high school class, once maybe the teacher I know the teacher keys that data in, but they have access to it and are able to use it, and it's really pretty simple.
I love that idea.
There's a couple things we said in terminology. You said they use globe. Now, we know that at this table because we're here at a GLOBE conference, which is Global Learning Observations to Benefit the Environment, or globe.gov for URL. You're actually, I know you're a modest person, so I know already the expression you're giving, but you're a leader in the GLOBE program, the International Environmental Education Program. And you're on U.S. Partner Forum. You sign up for a lot of committees in that. Where is strength in a program like that, and how do you think programs like that help in-service teachers?
So I think the strength of the program, so we're getting ready to celebrate our 25th year. I think that is an incredible strength, the longevity of the program. It's kind of interesting when I'll see teachers and I'll talk about GLOBE and they'll say, "Why did Globe 10 years ago? Is it the same?" And I say, "Yes." And you can almost see it on their. I said, "But that's a good thing." That doesn't mean the protocols haven't been improved. It doesn't mean that we haven't added new protocols as new questions have come along. But having base data and a base of protocols is very comforting, I think, at some level, right? So I can, probably, so that's one piece I think that's a great help to teachers. I think the other part is so I'm very, very lucky with teachers I work with. Our Globe teachers, I think, see it as a community. So they not only see Globe, the international side, but I think they actually see a benefit of sharing data regionally to look at things that they think kids are really excited about. So why are we getting snow today? And, the other side of the escarpment isn't. I mean, so I think there's lots of phenomenon-driven questions that are happening, and it comes from a group. So
I like to point out questions because that's what science is about, right?
Yeah,
it's the question and researching and trying to figure out possible answers to a question. So I like the point you drive there.
I'm listening to this and I hear, your background as a physics teacher and an earth science teacher. And I know Stephen, he works in the Department of Earth, Atmospheric, and Planetary Sciences, but I'm coming at this from a high school chemistry teacher. So would Globe be appropriate for someone like me?
Absolutely appropriate. And Sarah, it's one of the challenges I have because I think at least, I'll just put this on New York, the biggest struggle we've had with high school teachers has been chemistry teachers who I don't think are seeing the connection. And it could be, when I think back to my experiences with chemistry, right? They were great experiences, but the teachers I had never put a focus on how that chemistry connected to clean drinking water, atmospheric chemistry. So we talk a lot about greenhouse gases or air pollution or things like that, and those are all chemistry topics. But I don't know as if they ever. It wasn't environmental chemistry. It was a very traditional. But you brought up that Stephen was a fourth grade teacher. So when I was doing my undergrad, St. Bonaventure University, where I went, did not have secondary science. So I did a double major. So I actually have a license that says K-12 physics. I can teach physics to first graders. I have a license from New York State that says
that is impressive.
So I am real. No, so I never student taught above sixth grade.
Okay.
I never taught below ninth grade. So it was. We are so lucky to have the elementary teachers. They are experts in pedagogy. So when you talked about sort of the reluctance around content, I think it's a great opportunity because they are expert teachers. So when we do lots of our professional development, when we bring elementary and secondary people together, they both have strengths that they bring to the conversation. So it isn't that an elementary teacher is teaching something wrong, right? We help with the content, and the elementary teachers are actually helping the high school teachers to maybe don't talk so much. This idea of patience, perseverance. I don't know what the right P word is. Really kind of honest. It's great. It really is.
Could you describe a favorite activity that you've seen in any classroom related to science that when you see it, you just think, this is what it's about?
So I will tell you, and I'm not trying to play to the crowd here, the Earth Systems poster activity, when the conversation around those images, because I think great science starts with this question, right, and observation. And so that Earth Science poster activity, I've seen it from second, third grade, right, and with the appropriate use of kinds of questions, up to high school seniors or my undergrads. It's just an amazing use of data to drive questions, which then lead to further other questions, right, and other great activities. I mean, it's hard. I mean, any time that we have kids outside, it's just amazing. And I know that Earth Systems poster activity wasn't an outside activity. We just did. We got a NOAA Be Wet grant to look at water quality in the tributaries of the Great Lakes, and it was maybe the worst weather day we've had all fall was the day that we had kids outside.
Right.
And you could not have told,
They probably loved it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, pedagogically, so how you teach, right? Sarah and I, in the workshops that we teach, we use stuff that we've got from you. And so, I mean, you are one of our mentors.
Yes.
Whether you realize it or not, you might not want to take the blame for it. But yeah, so the questioning stuff you, what pedagogical, I want to say, attributes, what pedagogical areas do you think are extremely important for, let's say, PD providers like Sarah and I, to make sure that we incorporate into a science professional development?
Yeah. So I think one of the mistakes that I made, and hopefully you have stopped making, was we would, and I'm not trying to be too focused on the elementary, but this is be something. So you bring a group of elementary teachers together and say you're going to look at an activity that's intended to be for third or fourth grade, right? And we say something, and it came from a good place. You'll say, well, pretend you're a third grader. That's not what they need. What they need to do is have an adult experience with that same piece of content. Then you point out to them, okay, as an adult you were able to do this, but when you're doing this with a third grader or a fourth grader, right, this is how it ties to the kinds of things that we hope they're going to know and be able to do based on NGSS or any, so, or just good science practice.
Okay. I mean, I know when they tell me that's, pretend you are.
Yeah.
I'm like, you don't want fourth grade Stevie over here in your classroom.
I've often said that I have a lot of friends that it's not, they don't have to pretend very hard to be, to act like a third grader.
No,
I just think, you know what it was? I mean, I think it came from a place where we want them to see how it connects to what they're going to do. And so it came from a good place, but that's not really what they need. And I think when you let them have an adult experience with it too, you open the door for them to have the same sort of struggles that their kids will have. Like, I think, you ask them to model what they observe. And then you ask them to question that model. And even if it was the three of us doing this, right, it becomes pretty aware what the process of thinking through that modeling is and trying to explain the model or argue from evidence or something like that. So I think for them to have that kind of experience, they really they get a sense of what it'll be like for their kids. I think they also get, at the end, when they work through this, they all of a sudden see themselves as scientists and then realize, wait a minute, you didn't ask me to do anything that I can't do with kids. Right? I think I try to always find something that's, really, really simple. No big fancy equipment that sort of distracts from the idea of what they can do. It was a really interesting thing if you take an Expo marker and draw a stick figure on a piece of glass and then you put water on it, the stick figure, the Expo marker will separate. And so why does that happen? Chemistry teacher, why does that happen? It's a really interesting thing, right? Yeah. And so they immediately say, well, does it matter? Does it have to be water? Sort of opening up to this questioning around the variables. And then they pretty soon discover you have to have some controls. You can't be changing everything all at once. And really for a professional development provider to be able to put them in that situation and then be smart enough to not stop them from discovering those things. Like don't go right up on the board. Remember, one variable at a time.
Yeah.
Do those kinds of things. But just the conversation that they have, I think they just develop sort of a safe place, right? I think they realize it's okay to be wrong. I think that's a huge piece I think they take away from my methods class. That, listen, I thought this was the way this worked, and now I just discovered it isn't.
I like that. I mean, we tell teachers not to over-guide, but to let kids, through inquiry, make understandings. And yet, oftentimes when we teach professional development or we're teaching a college class or whatever, oftentimes the instruction there forgets that aspect. They leave out. They don't practice what we teach sometimes.
Well, I think both of you agree. I mean, great teachers make it look easy because they know what the end is going to be. So when you're offering that PD, you know exactly the things that you want them to take away from that. And then, so sort of having the guide rails, don't let it get too far adrift, knowing the way you get there. It's hard. It is kind of hard work, and it's not always successful.
Well, I know we've had plenty of fails getting to where we are to be able to do this.
Right.
So, science, professor of science education.
Where do you see the art of teaching heading in the next 50 years?
Yeah, see? Big questions.
Yeah.
Save them for the 14th.
So I think first of all, I have never felt that we were in a better place around standards than we are with MGSS.
Okay.
I really do. I mean, I think it would be an awesome outcome if we ended up with more scientists and engineers. That may not be the outcome, but I really think if we adopt these standards and make them our own and bring them to kids, that we will have young adults walking into voting booths, understanding the role that science plays in their lives. And that is a way noble goal to have. So I'm really excited about that. I am I'm not quite as old as dirt, but I'm getting older by the day, as my dad used to say. So the use of technology as a tool is pretty amazing. I do worry a little bit that there is a pretty significant gee whiz factor sometimes with technology, and that the story I tell, I had one of my students was out student teaching. She wanted me to come in and I think watch her teach science, and she was struggling to get a temperature probe to work. And part of it's on me. I didn't ask her what she was doing, but she's trying to get this temperature probe to work, and it won't work. Finally, she gets it to work, and she was trying to figure out the air temperature in the room. And where I was standing directly behind her was the thermostat, where she could have turned and read the temperature in the room, right? So, but she got to use a probe. So that's what I worry about. That sometimes I think we, for the sake of using technology, sometimes we bypass some things that are pretty simple, but also still pretty important. I mean, we collect a lot of water temperature data using, glass thermometers.
Yeah.
And I think we will for quite a while. Not that we couldn't use probes and things like that. And
not over reliant on technology.
So I think we're in a great place in terms of that. I worry a little bit about what are we taking away some of those things that I think helped all three of us get excited about science.
Yeah.
And I think more excited is part of it, but I think we also I have a great appreciation for what a spreadsheet can do for me. After fighting through not having a spreadsheet, So I think once you see the value of the technology too, but you have to have that first sort of grunt experience with. Yeah,
I completely agree. I think it means more when you sort of work through the process and face those challenges, and then you see we have an app for that. We have some technology that will make this easier, but then you've uncovered to begin with, really, those challenges.
I think all three of us saw in our classrooms too. I mean, I will never not be a fan of probeware. When a kid plugs a probe in and knows that you've helped them have enough of a sense that the data they're getting is not right. As opposed to going through a whole lab, getting to the end, and then discovering that your data wasn't great. You can all of a sudden, it's got to start over again. Yeah. That's not right.
All right, official last question. Sarah,
if you have the next 3 days totally open, nothing planned, what would you do?
She gave the last person a week. She only gave you 3 days.
Wow. I know you're busy.
That hurts.
Yeah.
You can have a week if that would make it
No, that's okay. I think what I would try to do is turn off my technology.
Oh.
I think I would try to get out to do the things I absolutely love. Being on the water. Oh. I absolutely love being out in the woodlot and doing those kinds of things. I think I would give myself the gift of doing that as opposed to what I will almost certainly have to do in the next 3 days.
Okay, well, that's fair.
Because I think, I think it really is a gift. I think the things that I said I got the most excited about seeing kids do in the classroom, right? We as teachers, our lives get so busy that I think sometimes we don't give ourselves those opportunities.
Right.
Right. We figure out a way to get kids out there, but sometimes we need to be able to give ourselves that chance to recharge our batteries doing the things that we're excited, that got us excited.
Yeah. I agree.
I love it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm so honored to be on. It's great.
Yeah,
I am one of your greatest fans.
I say you listen to the podcast.
Holy
You're
cow.
a fan, right?
Stephen, I am waiting at night, staring at my, waiting for the next episode to drop. I can barely sleep when I know it's coming out.
We're keeping that.
I don't get it out till Wednesday morning. But Wednesday mornings, I'm one of the late people to get it. But midnight, Tuesday.
You're that download bump on Wednesdays.
We try.
It auto downloads.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to our podcast.
If you love Superheroes of Science, be sure to subscribe, rate, and give a review on iTunes or your preferred podcast player. Be sure to join us as we add interviews of scientists and incorporate discussions of current trends in K-12 science.
Until next time, be super, and remember, you are someone's hero. Boiler up.
Hammer down.